Papa lay on the bed, his face so pale. Cassie cried, and Papa held out his hand to her. "It's all right, Cassie. I'm fine." "How did this happen?" asked Sarah. "How?" Papa looked at Grandfather and sighed. "I fell," he said. "I fell in the barn." Grandfather leaned over and ran his hands over Papa's leg. Papa caught his breath in pain. "It's broken," said Grandfather. Papa moaned again, and Sarah put a cool washcloth on his head. "I'll go get Sam," I said. Sarah looked out the window. "It's too fierce outside," said Sarah. "You can't go." Sarah looked at Grandfather. "And you won't go either," she said. "What should we do?" Grandfather pushed up his sleeves. "I'll set it," he said. "You?" said Sarah. "I've done it before. But I'll need help," said Grandfather. No one spoke. Sarah took Papa's hand. He closed his eyes. "Do it," Papa said softly. "Do it." "I'll need 2 poles the length of Jacob's leg," said Grandfather quickly, "and strips of cloth to tie them." "In the shed, Caleb," said Papa, his voice sounding weak. "Get them, Caleb," said Sarah. "Hurry, I'll get the cloth." I ran out into the storm. The wind almost blew me over, and I felt sudden ice under my eyes. I knew I was crying. Lottie and Nick sat up and watched me. When I came back into the warm kitchen, I carried 2 poles. In the bedroom, Cassie climbed up on the bed. Papa cried out with pain. "Cassie," said Grandfather very softly and carefully, "I need you to do something for me. For your Papa. I want you to go hide. I will come and find you later." Cassie stared at Grandfather. "Do you promise?" she asked. "I promise." "Now?" "Right now," said Grandfather. 1, 2, 3. Cassie ran out of the room. 4, 5. "Slower," said Papa softly. 6, 7, said Grandfather more slowly. "Sarah, I want you to hold Jacob from behind," said Grandfather, "and hold him no matter what, even if he tells you to stop." Sarah nodded. Grandfather took my arm. "I want you to go with Cassie. She'll need you." "Now?" I asked, echoing Cassie's question. Grandfather smiled at me. "Now," he said. I went to the door and looked back once. Papa's eyes were closed. Sarah got up on the bed behind him. Grandfather looked at me. A sudden burst of wind tossed sleet and snow against the window. I left the room. I fed Lottie and Nick. Seal and Min slept together in the basket. Then I put wood in the stove and sat down at the kitchen table. The kitchen was dark and dreary, and I shivered. I saw something move, and Cassie peeked out from under the daybed. "I'm waiting for Grandfather," she whispered. "You may have a long wait, Cassie." Then, before Cassie could answer, there was a terrible cry from the bedroom. "Papa," and then another cry. Cassie scrambled up and climbed into my lap. I held her, and she buried her face in my neck. We sat there as the room grew darker, and the wind blew snow against the house, and the dogs came to lean against my leg. "Caleb," Sarah woke me late. I was sleeping at the kitchen table, my head on my arms. Papa's fine. He's sleeping. John did a good job." Grandfather came into the kitchen. "I hope I never have to do that again," Sarah said. Grandfather nodded and poured a cup of coffee. "Me too," he said. "You were a good help, Sarah." Grandfather sat down, rubbing his eyes. Sarah smiled. "But you did it," she said. It was quiet in the kitchen, the wind suddenly dying outside. We're at the top of page 100. "Jacob. I remember once, when Jacob was very little," said Grandfather. "He got his hand caught in a brindle and broke his finger. He never complained." The wind came up again, a sudden burst rattling the windows. "Where have you been all this time?" asked Sarah so softly that her words were almost lost in the room. Grandfather looked at her. "Everywhere but home," he said, just as softly. "I'm glad you're here now," said Sarah. "I'm glad too," I said. "It was my fault, though," said Grandfather. "What happened to Jacob?" "It could have been you with a broken leg," I said. "Papa pushed you too." Sarah smiled. "You too," Sarah said to Grandfather. You and Jacob, how alike you are." "Who am I like?" I asked. "Who do you want to be like?" I asked Sarah. I thought about that. I had thought about it for a long time, but didn't say anything. "Where's Cassie, Caleb? Is she asleep?" asked Sarah. Grandfather smiled. He leaned over and took Cassie's foot, sticking out from under the daybed. "I found you, Cassie," he whispered. "I found you." Chapter 10. I thought things would be better between Papa and Grandfather, but they weren't. Papa was silent in his room. Grandfather and I mended fences and fed the animals and shoveled out stalls. "What's your horse's name?" I asked Grandfather. "Jack," said Grandfather. "Papa had a horse named Jack, too," I told him. Grandfather didn't answer. "Sarah's right. You and Papa are alike," I said. I knew Grandfather wouldn't answer, and he didn't. "And Jacob didn't go to Maine when the drought was here?" Grandfather asked me. We were in his room, the door closed. "He stayed here, alone," I said, "until the rains finally came. And then he came to Maine, surprising us all. But he was the one who was surprised, because Sarah and Papa had Cassie after that, and she was the biggest surprise of all." I pointed to what Anna had written. "When we came home by train, we passed trees and hills and lakes filled with water," read Grandfather. Grandfather could read better now, his voice strong. "They are beautiful, the trees and hills and lakes filled with water. But the prairie is home, the sky so big it takes your breath away, and land like a giant quilt tossed out." Grandfather closed the book. It was very quiet in the room. A knock at the door made us both jump. "Hello? Are you in there, Caleb?" asked Sarah. "Yes, I'll be down soon," I called to her. "What are you doing? Is John there?" "Yes, Sarah," said Grandfather. "We're almost done." "It's private," I said. There was silence behind the door. Soon we heard Sarah's footsteps going down the hall and down the stairs. I handed Grandfather a blank book. "What is this?" he asked. "This is yours," I said. "Yours to write in. You can do it now." Grandfather opened it. I had written his name, John Whitting, there. He turned the pages and saw them all empty and white. Grandfather put a hand on his chest. "Grandfather?" I was scared. I thought he was sick. Grandfather waved me away. "It isn't pain," he said to me. He closed his empty book and looked at me. "It's love," he said. When the weather cleared, Sam came out to the farm. He taught Papa how to use crutches so he could get around. Then he gave Grandfather a lecture. I wasn't meant to hear. I was in the hallway, out of sight. Sam and Grandfather sat at the kitchen table. "You can't do all the work, John," said Sam. "Your heart can't take it." "Nonsense," said Grandfather. "Oh, I see," said Sam. "You feel guilty for leaving Jacob when he was little, so you'll make it up by working hard and dying, and that will make things right again." "More nonsense," said Grandfather. "Want some more coffee? I made it." Sam shook his head. "Stubborn," he said. Old fool." Papa came into the kitchen on his crutches, Sarah and Cassie with him. "Easy, Jacob," said Sarah. She helped Papa to a chair. "I can do this," said Papa. "It's good to be out of bed." "No work, Jacob," said Sam. "I mean that." "Grandfather and Caleb are doing the work," said Cassie, sitting on Grandfather's lap. Sam frowned. "So I hear," he said. "Is that true, Sarah?" "There's been a lot of repair work from the storm," said Sarah. "I don't know what Caleb and I would do without John." Sam frowned at Grandfather. Grandfather ignored him. "Any letters from Justin?" Sarah asked Sam. "No letters for a while. Anna waits for the mail every day." "Are you worried?" asked Sarah. Sam got up and put on his coat. "Yes, a little. Letters take such a long time." "And the influenza?" asked Papa. "Better, Jacob. Fewer cases. I think it has run its course," said Sam. "We think about Justin every day," said Sarah. "Thoughts are good," said Sam with a smile. "Having him here would be better." Sam went to the door and turned. "No work, Jacob. And," he looked at Grandfather, "you know what I think." What does that mean? Asked Sarah. It's, Sam began. Private, said Sarah and Sam at the same time. It was evening. Sarah was in the bedroom with Papa. He was tired from learning to use his crutches. Grandfather was tired too. We had replaced a barn beam. It had taken a long time. I worry about Grandfather. Sam says his heart cannot take too much work. I try to keep him from shoveling hay, from cleaning out the stalls. I try to keep him safe. But winter is hard here. Winter makes you tired. Even walking through the snowdrifts makes you tired. In the kitchen, Cassie sat on Grandfather's lap. What now? Asked Grandfather. He sounded gruff, but Cassie knew better. Cassie wasn't afraid of Grandfather. Would you sing me a song? Asked Cassie. I don't know any songs, said Grandfather. Yes, you do, said Cassie. I heard you humming a song when you were in your bedroom. When the door was closed, I was outside, listening. Were you? Said Grandfather with a small smile. What song? Cassie hummed a little of the song. Did I hum that? Said Grandfather. That was a long time ago. Too long ago for me to remember the words. Cassie didn't say anything. She stared at Grandfather for a long time. Finally, he gave in. Oh, all right, he said. Don't you laugh, Grandfather warned me. Don't even smile. Okay. And then, in the dark room, Cassie on his lap, Grandfather began to sing. Sleep, my love, and peace attend thee. All through the night, guardian angels, God will lend thee. All through the night, soft the drowsy hours are creeping, hill and vale in slumber sleeping, I my loving vigil keeping, all through the night. I looked up and saw Sarah in the doorway, Papa behind her on his crutches. Sarah smiled at Cassie, her hand on Grandfather's shoulders, but Papa didn't smile. He looked odd. He looked sad. He looked like someone remembering something that he hadn't thought of for a long time. Angels watching ever round thee, all through the night. In my slumbers close surround thee, all through the night. They should all fears disarm thee. No forebodings should alarm thee. They will let no peril harm thee, all through the night. When I looked up again, Papa had gone. Sarah's eyes were wet from tears. Again, whispered Cassie, sing it again. I stood outside Sarah and Papa's bedroom. I raised my hand to knock, then stopped. I could hear voices inside the room, Sarah and Papa's voices. John has done so much, Jacob, said Sarah. Sarah, I know what you're trying to do. I told you once, and I'll say it again. I will not forgive him. There was a silence. Then Sarah's voice sounding soft and hard at the same time. Your unforgiving nature is something I do not love about you, Jacob, she said softly. Papa didn't answer her, and suddenly the door opened. Sarah looked at me for a moment and then brushed by me without saying a word. Papa just stood there and sighed. I had never, ever heard Sarah say she didn't love anything about Papa. Sarah has always loved Papa. What will happen if Sarah doesn't love Papa anymore? Sarah is sad, I know. I see her face when she looks at Papa. Sarah's sad, but Papa's just angry. Papa turned from the window and sat on the bed. What is it, Caleb? My birthday is coming, I said. Yes, it is, said Papa. And I don't want books or tools or even a horse of my own for my birthday. Papa looked up, surprised. So I'm at the bottom of page 114. I want to encourage your child to read the end of chapter 10. Thank you.